Have you ever felt like God was nowhere to be found, especially when things got messy and chaotic? Well, today we're diving into a biblical story that feels just like that, yet it's packed with hidden clues about divine providence. We're talking about the incredible story of Esther, a book in the Bible where God's name is never even mentioned. Stick around, because you won't believe the twists and turns in this ancient tale of intrigue, courage, and unexpected reversals. Our story kicks off in the mighty Persian Empire with King Xerxes, a ruler who really likes to party. He throws a banquet that lasts for a staggering 187 days, all just to show off how rich and powerful he is. On the final day, fueled by a bit too much wine, he makes a ridiculous demand. He orders his wife, Queen Vashti, to come out and parade her beauty in front of his drunk friends. Vashti, in a move of incredible self-respect, refuses. The king, in a fit of drunken rage, deposes her. And to top it all off, he issues a decree that every man should be the master of his own houses, if a law could solve that problem. With the queen's throne now empty, the king's advisors cook up a plan, a kingdom-wide beauty pageant to find a new queen. This is where the story shifts from a royal soap opera to something much deeper. We meet two key characters, Mordecai and his young cousin Hadassah, whom we come to know as Esther. They are Jewish exiles living in Persia. Following Mordecai's advice, Esther keeps her Jewish heritage a secret as she enters the contest. And guess what? She wins. The king is completely smitten and crowns her the new queen of Persia. Right after she becomes queen, a seemingly random event occurs. Mordecai, who often sits by the king's gate, overhears two royal guards plotting to assassinate King Xerxes. He immediately tells Esther, who then informs the king, giving Mordecai full credit. The plot is foiled, the guards are dealt with, and Mordecai's heroic act is duly recorded in the royal chronicles. A beauty pageant winner, an assassination plot, a drunken king. It all feels like a series of strange coincidences. God isn't mentioned, but you can't help but feel that a master plan is quietly unfolding behind the scenes. What could it all be leading to? The plot thickens with the introduction of our villain, Haman. He isn't Persian, he's an Agagite, a descendant of an ancient enemy of the Israelites. The king promotes Haman to the highest position in the kingdom and commands everyone to bow down to him. But Mordecai, a faithful Jew, refuses to kneel before any man but God. When Haman sees this, he is consumed with rage. It's not enough to punish just one man. When he finds out Mordecai is Jewish, Haman hatches a diabolical plan to annihilate the entire Jewish people. He goes to the king with a twisted story, convincing him to sign a decree for the destruction of all Jews, to decide the date for this genocide. Haman rolls the dice, a form of ancient lottery called pur. The date is set, the 13th day of the month of Adar, 11 months away. With the decree sealed, Haman and the king sit down for a celebratory drink, completely oblivious to the terror they've just unleashed. The entire Jewish population is now under a death sentence, and their only hope lies with two people in the palace, Mordecai and Queen Esther. When Mordecai learns of the decree, he is devastated. He sends a message to Esther, urging her to go before the king and plead for her people, but this is a life-threatening request. Approaching the king unsummoned was a capital offense in Persia. Esther is terrified, and rightly so, but Mordecai challenges her with words that echo through history. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this. He believes that if she stays silent, deliverance will come from somewhere else, but she and her family would perish. This is the turning point for Esther. She rises to the occasion with breathtaking courage, saying, "If I perish, I perish." She decides to risk everything. Esther's plan is brilliant. Instead of a direct confrontation, she invites the king and Haman to an exclusive banquet. They both attend, and at the dinner she simply asks them to come to another private banquet the very next day. Haman leaves the party feeling on top of the world, honored by the queen, second in command of the empire. But his joy evaporates when he sees Mordecai at the gate, once again refusing to bow, fuming. Haman goes home and, on the advice of his wife and friends, orders a massive 75-foot stake to be built, planning to impale Mordecai on it first thing in the morning. It seems like the end for Mordecai and a dark, final night for the Jewish people. But then the story pivots in the most unexpected way. That very night, the king can't sleep. To pass the time, he asks for the royal chronicles to be read to him. And of all the records they could have read, the servant just happens to read the entry about how Mordecai saved the king's life from the assassins. The king suddenly realizes he never rewarded Mordecai for this act of loyalty. Just at that moment, Haman walks into the court, ready to ask the king's permission to execute Mordecai. Before Haman can speak, the king asks him what should be done for the man the king delights to honor. Haman, in his arrogance, assumes the king is talking about him. So he lays out the most extravagant honor imaginable. Put him in the king's own robes, place him on the king's horse, and have a high-ranking official lead him through the city, proclaiming his greatness. The king loves the idea and says, "Great, go and do all of that." For Mordecai the Jew, the reversal is staggering. The man who came to arrange an execution is now forced to publicly honor his most hated enemy. Haman has to lead Mordecai through the city streets, shouting his praises. This incredible turn of events marks the beginning of Haman's downfall and Mordecai's rise. The next day arrives, and it's time for Esther's second banquet. The king and Haman are there, and the king again offers Esther anything she wants, up to half his kingdom. This time, she doesn't hold back. She reveals her Jewish identity and tells the king that a wicked man has plotted to destroy her and her entire people. The king is stunned. Who is he? Where is he? He demands. Esther points directly at her other guest and says, an adversary and enemy. This vile Haman, the king, filled with wine and rage, storms out into the garden. Haman, terrified, throws himself at Esther's couch, begging for his life. Just as he's falling on her, the king walks back in. Seeing Haman in such a compromising position with the queen, the king misinterprets the scene and becomes even more furious. At that perfect moment, one of the king's attendants points out, by the way, there's a 75-foot stake at Haman's house that he built for Mordecai, the man who saved the king's life. The king's response is swift and decisive. Hang him on it. And just like that, Haman is executed on the very gallows he prepared for Mordecai. It's a shocking and ironic end, but the larger problem still remains. Haman is gone, but his evil decree to kill the Jews is still the law of the land, and a Persian king's decree cannot be revoked. The focus now returns to Esther and Mordecai. They go back to the king, and since the old decree can't be undone, the king empowers Mordecai to issue a new counter-decree. This new law gives the Jewish people the right to assemble and defend themselves against anyone who might try to attack them on the appointed day. Mordecai, now elevated to second in command, sends this new decree throughout the empire. What was once a day of dread is transformed into a day of hope. The Jewish people celebrate with feasts and joy, and Mordecai's fame spreads far and wide. Finally, the day decreed by Haman arrives, the 13th of Adar. But now things are very different. Empowered by the new decree and with the support of the kingdom's officials who now fear Mordecai, the Jews triumph over their enemies. They defend themselves and destroy those who had plotted to annihilate them, including Haman's 10 sons. The next day is filled with celebration and relief. They have been rescued from the brink of extinction. To commemorate this incredible deliverance, Esther and Mordecai establish an annual 2-day feast called Purim, named after the pur, or the dice, that Haman rolled to choose their day of doom. The story concludes with a short epilogue, noting Mordecai's greatness as second in command and the prosperity of the Jewish people under his leadership. So, what does this wild story teach us? The Book of Esther is a masterpiece of literary irony and divine providence. It shows us that even when God seems silent or absent, He is always working behind the scenes. He works through the morally ambiguous actions of flawed people, in the mechanisms of human politics and history, to accomplish His ultimate purposes. It invites us to trust in His plan, even when we can't see it. It calls us to have hope, to believe that no matter how dark things get, God is committed to redeeming His world and bringing good out of evil. That is the powerful and timeless message of the Book of Esther. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more content that explores the fascinating depths of ancient texts. Let me know in the comments what you find most inspiring about Esther's courage. See you next time.